Hello. Thank you
Hi.
so much for having us.
Hi. Well, it's very exciting to be having this conversation after watching the movie, which was amazing. Can you tell us about yourselves, where you're from, where you've lived, and where you live now?
Hmm.
So you can
Okay.
start with Esther.
Okay. So I was originally born and raised up till 10 years of age in Transylvania as a Hungarian minority member. So that's Romania. And then when the communism was over, me and my family, we moved to Hungary. So now I live in Hungary, but I spent most of my life on the road as a filmmaker with my husband and dear colleague András.
But that's only for the last 10 years or so. And before, she was on the road with other people and by herself.
That's kind of true, but now it's more intense that we're filmmakers, where we have our own little production company for 10 years and we produced over 75 documentaries. And the film you just watched, hopefully you watched, is the first feature-length documentary of ours. But let's talk about that later.
And we're on the road. We started our documentary series called On the Spot as university students of the Hungarian Film Academy. But both of us studied abroad as well, in the US and in the UK. And now we're for the last 5 years, we have been on the road with our son, Moses, who was born in 2015, and we spent like 6 months a year on the road filming with tribes, about history, environmental issues, and so on. I was born and raised in Budapest, Hungary. I have four siblings, and we met at the Film Academy here in Budapest.
Wow, very nice. Very nice. Is there a specific film that you would say inspired you to become directors?
Hmm.
No one specifically. I was 11 when I watched a TV report about the hostage crisis in Entebbe, Uganda, when a group of Israeli hostages were taken by a group of Ugandans, armed Ugandans, and there was a fantastic rescue operation by the Mossad, and I was fascinated by the report at the age of 10, and by the report and the way it was done, and then I thought, wow, this is what I would love to do: tell stories with a camera around the world to the viewers. But it's not, yeah, it wasn't a film or a documentary or a feature-length film. It was just a report that was really inspirational for a 10-year-old kid.
Hmm.
Great.
For me, it was many documentaries, but mostly I fell in love with the process of filmmaking at the university, where I had a really good mentor, a documentary filmmaker woman who's done awesome films, and also she was a very good mentor, because whenever I started doing my first film, she would just sit with me in the editing suite, and she would just try to teach me how this is done step by step. And of course, when you're not working on the post production of a movie, but you are in the production with the real characters, and you're in the story, that there are some parts which nobody can teach you. That's something that, I don't know, you have to be, I'm not saying you have to be born for this, but almost. Because the aftermath is something you can learn, but how to communicate, how to shape a story, how to go with someone, how to be very flexible, even if you have an idea in your head, and the story can go so many ways. And what we really like about our profession is that it surprises us all the time. And it was exactly this way with Born in Auschwitz as well. Because when we first heard this story about this miracle, then we only had a historical miracle story in our head, and we said, okay, we have to meet this lady because somebody was born in Auschwitz as a Jewish person and before the liberation and survived, and the mother came out with a tiny, tiny baby who then became a person and didn't die during childhood. So that was already fascinating enough. But that was the history part, how, you know, she was born and how she was raised. And when later on in the film process, actually not that very late on, our protagonist surprised us with the news that she was invited to a conference in Germany where she would never have gone before, because she was, of course, very understandably so, very distant from that country. But she was invited to this conference, which was about prenatal trauma in the womb. I mean, how does that sound to you? It's strange, right? It's like trauma, prenatal, before you're being born in your mother's womb. And they did a whole conference, psychiatrist, about this in Germany, and they invited her. At first she was like, why should I go? What kind of trauma would I have suffered when I was not even conscious? And then, you know, her daughter came up with a list of things which were very, very different in their life and what she acknowledged during her life. And she showed it to her mother. This is why you should go, because we had this and this and this and this in our life, which is really different from other people. And according to her, it's not necessarily normal. Of course, we can argue about what is normal, what is not, but that was her approach. So one of our protagonists went to this conference. So we followed her, and then we followed a very different path throughout this film.
Wow, that was one of my questions, is how did you get involved with the conference and meeting the mother and daughter? So I appreciate that explanation. It is very interesting, the biological aspects of passing on trauma. It is something that I hear a lot of research is being done now. So mostly I would like to get an understanding of, you pretty much explained to us how you went through the process, where the idea came from. How would you say the first day of shooting went with the family? Because it, you know, within the movie, you're integrated into this family, into their daily life. So how is shooting with the family and being involved with them day to day?
Well, it really didn't start like that. We just met Angela, who was born in Auschwitz, and it was much later when we were allowed to film with the family of her daughter. It's an ultra-Orthodox family with 4 children. The husband is a rabbi. Gotti, the daughter of Angela, is a cancer researcher, and she's baking beautiful breads as a hobby. And so they're super busy. They are deeply religious. It was really not obvious that we can just be like fly on the wall at home and film everything. So that actually happened much later. We were working on this film for 5 years, and it was towards the end when we were allowed to film with the family, with the kids, to really just get an idea how she creates that sense of home and safety and love, what she talked about. Yeah, we felt fortunate and blessed to be able to capture those intimate family scenes at home in Montreal. And yeah, that it was after everything. I think it was the last bit of filming, actually. Those scenes and family scenes the film starts with.
What made you decide to direct this film?
What do you mean?
So what was your drive to do this story, to follow this idea, to research, find out about the mother and daughter, Angela and Kathy, and their story?
We heard and read that there was a person, a Jewish person, who was born in Auschwitz before the liberation and survived. And
Already that was a big drive.
of course, we wanted to make a movie. It sounded crazy. It sounded unbelievable. It was miraculous. And then we asked our colleagues, can you find her? Because we did a lot of research for earlier films with our team when we did a series on children of dictators, and we had to find people at places, which are really, really hard, and ended up filming with some of the descendants of leaders and dictators, like Fidel Castro, Augusto Pinochet, Idi Amin in Uganda, and so on. So we were hoping that our team would be able to find her, locate her. Eventually, they did, and we called her, and then 6 months later, we were able to meet in Montreal. And it was obvious that there needs to be a movie, a documentary, because there hasn't been any major documentary on this story, and so we started to work on it.
But later on, our drive, of course, it was to show how the trauma is inherited from generation to generation, and yes, you can deal with it, and there are conversations which can be healing, of course very painful at the beginning, but they can be healing, and you can actually do something about even such major traumas as somebody has suffered in the Holocaust. We think that this movie is universal. We don't really talk about it as a specific Holocaust movie because it could help, or I don't know, be a little bit of an eye-opener for basically anyone who has had problems or, untold stories in the family and hardships and so on. And actually it was very, very not just touching, but also surprising after we had the European premieres, how many people got really deep with this movie. It's something that you can't really count on as a filmmaker beforehand, because you don't know where exactly in somebody's heart your story will reach. But we got so many, like really hundreds of reactions from people, Jewish, not Jewish, like all sorts of people. Like it really united a lot of people, especially in our country. Of course, we had a lot of reactions here because people also know our work in Hungary, but also in Germany, in Austria, in France. So you were asking about the drive, and we knew that this is a very, very important thing, because this is how you can keep, first of all, the story alive, that you show other generations. So what is the aftermath of this horrible thing, what happened in the 40s, but not just that. You can then open the story and have it as a universal thing. I mean, who had a conversation so close with one's mother? Just think about that, or one's father. So yeah,
I feel that you did show a really great scene when you had them talking together, and how there was some insight from Angela to welcome some of the information she received from the different psychotherapists, that they were able to start working on healing their relationship. It was really great, description, and how you were able to portray that in the movie.
The daughter had actually help from psychotherapists, because the mother, she refused, right, to work with therapists, because she's more a different generation, a different approach to how to deal with negative things. So actually the daughter was, but yes, she was very open about it. And I think she also came into this movie with an open heart, that she would like to help others as well, because she went through a lot of things. So
What would you
her
say is your overall experience directing this movie with the cast and crew? Your overall experience.
I really can't answer that question. It was beautiful to spend so much time and energy on one film. We also learned a lot as parents, also as children of our parents. Yeah.
beautiful journey.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the research involved in making the film? I know that you've mentioned that you heard about them, but was there any detailed research that you had to engage in and doing this film and making the film?
At the beginning, we had a lot of research done on being born in Auschwitz, like how many people were actually being born, what happened to pregnant women, what happened to babies who were born. That was a horrible, horrible research. I was pregnant with our first child.
Now that the film is
remember-
released, now she's pregnant with our second child.
Currently, I'm 6 months pregnant. But that time, I remember I just read the research material, and it was very traumatic. Of course, it would be for anybody. It was traumatic for András as well, but I had a child in my womb. So yeah, that part was really researched. The other part, it can't be really researched because that's life. That's the evolving thing between mother and daughter.
Yeah, but we had historians working on the first, it was more than 100 pages of any available information and stories and interviews and everything they could find about babies being born in concentration camps, and specifically in Auschwitz. And then we got in touch with Randolph Abraham, who is an expert was an expert on the Holocaust, especially in this part of the world. One of the most acknowledged scholars of the subject, and he wrote a recommendation letter, and then we worked with the Claims Conference. They also supported the film, and yeah, so that, especially at the beginning, there was a lot of research to be done, but as Eszter said, it's such a personal drama unfolding that one cannot really research it.
And you don't have to. I mean, that would be very artificial.
Yeah, to get Pope Francis in the film was quite difficult, and but that wasn't really research. We were trying to get to him every possible way.
We were trying to hack the Vatican to let us have a meeting with Pope Francis. No, I'm kidding, but it was really difficult.
It looked like it was really seamless in the movie, that piece of Angela going and meeting the Pope. And so for you, all the efforts behind you actually having to do that, I think it really paid off.
And it's just 90 seconds or 2 minutes of the film, but we were trying to make that meeting happen for months without any success. And then a book arrived, a book was delivered, which was written by Rabbi Skorka and Pope Francis before he became Pope. I'll show you the book because it's really interesting.
So it's a very, very good rabbi friend of Pope Francis from Argentina. And they wrote a book together about all the questions they have in Judaism and Christianity. It's a very, very nice piece of literature.
This is it.
Wow, very nice. That's interesting.
And at the end, both Rabbi Skorka and Pope Francis signed it. So we keep it as a beautiful memory.
But why Andras brought this book? Because we got actually to Pope Francis through this rabbi, because we didn't know what else to do. And we sent him an email. Pope Francis was paying his respect in Auschwitz-Birkenau. And we got an answer almost immediately that, yes, of course, I'm going to try to help. I don't think even Rabbi Skorka heard about such story as Angela's, you know, that a lady will be there who's actually 70 something and she was born in this camp. So thanks to this rabbi, we could film that little bit, and thanks to him, Angela could meet.
We should send the film to Rabbi.
Angela could meet the Pope, and we also met with him. So that was a very, very nice little. I mean, I think for Angela it was a big event.
For us too.
For us too.
I would say so, yes. I would say that was really impactful and a very important piece in your movie. It was very good. So you talked about hearing about the story of Angela, but how did you hear about her story, being born in Auschwitz? Is it something that
we were producing a film in Mexico, in Baja California, in the Pacific Ocean, with satellite internet. We didn't, it was difficult to get emails. And I remember we got an email from my mom saying, oh, there's an interesting article you might find interesting. And there were 2 sentences about 2 Jewish babies who were born in Auschwitz. And one was born on the day of the liberation, already with the help of a Soviet doctor, and the other, Angela. So that's how we heard about the story, and that's when we asked our colleagues here in Budapest to try to look into it. And we were filming about the whales because we were doing a series about giving birth, and in different cultures, and in different we thought that we would be able to film a gray whale being born for the first time in the history of natural history of filmmaking. We didn't. It was a failure, but we spent 2 weeks on the ocean every day, 8 hours, trying to get the emails on the satellite internet.
And actually, during that series, we filmed with a lady who gave birth in Dachau concentration camp, and with his son who was born there. So we were already trying to do something about being born in a concentration camp, even before we knew that there is Angela, who was born in Auschwitz-Birkenau, which is very, very different than being born in Dachau, because in Dachau, they allowed these mothers at the end of the war, 7 Hungarian mothers who were pregnant, to give birth in a dungeon, like a horrible place, but still the Nazis wanted to, I don't know, demonstrate that, look, we even let them to give birth because they knew already that they're gonna lose the war. So it was a very different story. You know, the babies were not threatened to be killed. The mothers were not threatened to be killed. Of course, it was horrible circumstances. They even had a doctor at birth, but we found one of these mothers still alive, and we actually filmed with her in a nursing home in Toronto, and it was a beautiful experience, and also with the son who was born there. So we already had, let's call this like a pre-exam or pre-study for this movie. But but again, very, very different story.
We can send you the film if you're interested.
You're really hearing amazing stories, and working with these individuals has to be so impactful and so important. It's you're really giving us the opportunity to see all this information and learn about these experiences through your work. It's really amazing.
Thank you.
So I have 2 final questions that I would like to ask. I would like to know, what were your strategies when directing, bringing these characters to life, writing the dialogue? Like it's interesting to see how you depicted their story. What were your strategies?
What do you mean by writing the dialogue?
So when we're looking at, when I'm watching the movie, for example, I'm seeing how the story evolves. What was your strategy in filming it in that direction?
In the editing room?
Sure. And how you present the film?
Mm.
So, you know, different pieces of it that you put together, I feel that it was such a powerful way of hearing the story. And you go back to the history, what from Angela's mother and her stepfather, you know, there's different pieces that you go back and forth to. So what was your strategy in doing it in that direction? Deciding
There's
to
a lot of thought to that, how to present this story, at the same time how to see the past without actually showing you know, archives from concentration camps, and give it a different approach. That's why we chose the animation for most of the things which happened to Angela's mother and Angela in the past. And also at the same time, we had to give a lot of thought how to evolve the present story, which is right like the spine of the whole movie, and how these two stories will help each other so that you get involved as a viewer more and more and more in their story and drama. So we had a lot of thinking about that with our colleagues. We prepared for the shootings at the end a lot, because Angela and Cody wanted to end the shooting process in Israel.
They wanted the film to end in Israel.
Yeah. So we had to find out the whole visual world, or we felt that we have to find out something like that, because we want to take it to a different level and not just show that they're traveling in Israel, because, you know, it's easy to have the same pictures like everybody else, to have the same approach in Israel like everybody else, which is nice, but we wanted to lift this up a little bit to a different level, because I think the story between mother and daughter is also very particular. The conversations, like the hardship of talking about past and childhood and traumas. So that's why we came up with the idea that we would take these very kind of surreal natural places in Israel, like the Negev Desert, like the Dead Sea. They all have a very, very particular landscape and also feeling about it. They're really, really strange places, very beautiful and very historical. But, you know, we wanted to take them out from the cities and synagogues and all those places into some space where, you know, we really like that walking around in these huge empty spaces is like looking for something together.
Mhm.
So, and also given the fact that, you know, the Jews were wandering in these deserts, it's like it was a lot of symbolism connected to their story.
And we really wanted to avoid any kind of cliche. We had this urge of trying to escape the typical Jerusalem scenes and locations, you know, taking the Holocaust survivors to Israel, film them there. It, for us as filmmakers, it felt like a huge cliche.
Done many times.
And same reason why we avoided using archive about Auschwitz. We really didn't want to. Everyone saw those pictures so many times.
Mhm.
They almost became illustrational, which is a
Mhm.
tragedy. And we really wanted to make sure that you can't say that we have seen that, because this is a story we wanted to tell the viewers, the story of today in the present, coming from the past through 3 generations. But we didn't want to use those panels and typical pictures which take you into a place that you know already.
And also, as Andras mentioned, I think this is a very good term, like illustrational, which is not, it's not the, I mean, I don't like looking at those archives as illustration, because I think that's very, very shallow. it's, you know, it's, you don't illustrate anything with Auschwitz-Birkenau. So if it's not, I think it should be much more difficult to use this kind of archives, also out of respect, also out of a lot of things. And we wanted to surprise you as a viewer, not to take you into the same pattern like you usually go when you watch a Holocaust movie. And we also think that this is not a typical Holocaust movie at the same time, but we wanted to make sure that when you watch it, you're going different directions.
And just one more thing, since we're here at one of the oldest Jewish film festivals, there is this unbelievable Holocaust fatigue in the film industry and at film festivals. And if you say, yeah, it's unbelievable that it really exists. We saw that when we talked to broadcasters, when we talked to some of leaders of festivals. Yeah, they cannot imagine anything contemporary having to do with the Holocaust. And
they say, oh, it's been done.
And they don't want to watch. They don't want to watch anything about Auschwitz. And it's it was shocking for us to realize and to see. And we really wanted to make sure to create a memory to what happened in a way that might matter today to the viewers, to the audience. They can relate to the film through their own story, through their own family background, through their own trauma and multi-generational trauma that they're carrying and they didn't discuss with their parents and so on. Yeah.
And we believe that this way people.
I'm sorry, as a viewer, I think you did an excellent job in portraying that. And I feel like your landscape made you, as a viewer, feel like they were going through a journey. So I want to just give you that feedback that I have about watching the film. And that's how I saw it. It's like I felt like you were really showing their story as a journey. And it really, really resonated with what's happening today as the parent-child relationships, as they're aging in place right now as survivors. So I agree that your angle is an excellent way, a different way of talking about the history, the story, the miracle, and what's happening in present day.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
So I think my last question would be, why would you think the story is so important to tell? But I feel like you've answered that already in lots of different ways.
I think, yeah. Yeah.
So that really finalizes all my questions. And I don't know if you have anything you would like to add or any questions and anything we could discuss together that in addition to what we were talking about.
Nothing really. I'm just hoping that the film inspires a lot of conversations in America as it did in Europe, which really amazed us that, we're being stopped all the time. Like, I watched this film and then I had this difficult conversation with my son. We told each other this and this and that, and we're just like, oh my God, okay, this is absolutely amazing. So I'm just really hoping that it will open some hearts and some discussions, and even sometimes maybe different perspectives on your parents, because this is not about blaming anyone. It's just to showcase through two beautiful souls, Scotty and Angela, how the different narratives of different generations with the best intention can go outweighs completely, and then how difficult it is to bring it back and to talk about things. So it's not about you're blaming your parents, because now the responsibility is in your own hands. Your parents loved you, they tried the best for you, and maybe it was not the right way for you, but now it's your turn. It's in your hands.
And it's really, it's about the next generation in a way. And which was really nice to see is how the audience share was for example, in Germany. We expected that maybe it will attract an older audience because of the subject, because of history. It was on Arte, which is the leading cultural public TV network in Europe. And surprisingly, in Germany, actually more people watched it, but 2 times more people watched it from the age group 15 to 25 than the general public or the general age group of audience share and rating. So it was fantastic to see that it was more than double among the youth. And also in Hungary, it was the most watched TV program of the channel, which aired it of the last 3 years. So it could generate a lot of discussions within families, and some of it arrived to us in letters and emails and notes, hundreds of them, and we never expected that kind of impact, and we can't really wish for anything more as filmmakers than this to trigger these so important conversations we usually don't have with our loved ones, with our children, with our parents.
But definitely the film I would say is opening the doors for that discussion to take place. It's a great way to begin those discussions. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you.
So I'd like to thank the directors, Eszter Cseke and András Takács from the movie Born in Auschwitz for joining us. Once again, thank you to all our members, sponsors, community partners, volunteers, all of you film lovers, and especially our presenting sponsors, the Center for Advancement of Jewish Education, SAGE, and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation for their continued support throughout all these years. And thank you, our audience, for participating in the 24th Annual Miami Jewish Film Festival.